Hey everyone, it's Dom Griffin, your favorite film critic, and you're watching the Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series I do where we talk about new movies, old movies, television series reviews, screenplay analysis, that sort of thing. So if you like movies and you like movie-adjacent popular culture and you like to see somebody pick those things apart, you're in the right place and you should consider subscribing. We're reviewing The Flash today, the hotly anticipated movie that is supposed to sort of wash away the sins of the DCEU and make space for the new James Gunniverse that is supposed to be, you know, DC's big 10-year plan that David Zaslav is like signed off on, and there's supposed to be a whole new dawn starting with James Gunn's Superman Legacy, which will continue moving whenever the WGA strike is over. There has been a lot of controversy around this film, largely because of its embattled star, and just the idea of like, how are you really going to salvage this? These movies are all over the place. People have very strong feelings about the DCEU. Either they're very staunch Snyderverse supporters who are probably just going to review bomb the fuck out of this movie, or they're people who are a little more open-minded and just like the fact that the DCEU offered like a more varied approach than the MCU does. You know, there's lots of different sides to this, but be that as it may, The Flash is supposed to be the button on all of that. It's supposed to be using The Flash as a character and sort of the Flashpoint story arc theme stuff that Jeff Johns and Andy Muschietti created with the Flashpoint comic, and using that as like a device to create a new dawn. That's like the whole point behind this movie. Whatever else you feel about it, that is the movie's like creative and financial purpose to exist. This is probably going to be kind of a long boy video because I have a lot to say about the film, but it requires me to like talk heavy spoilers, and people hate those. So I'm going to have part of this video just kind of be a straightforward review of what I felt about the film, like a regular person, like a critic might share, you know, like my job. And then there's going to be a point where I'm like, hey, if you don't want to be spoiled, leave. Like, just get the fuck out of here. And then I'm just going to ramble until I get tired about things in the movie that I'll discuss later. Obviously, I think the biggest thing people talk about with this movie is the Ezra Miller stuff. And we'll get into that in the spoiler section because I can't really talk about it or what my feelings are on it anyway without spoiling things. So we're just gonna, if you want to hear about that, that'll be later. Oh, this movie. Okay. I will say right off the bat that I don't think The Flash is a disaster. I went in kind of with tepid expectations. I thought the more and more big reactions we got from people like Tom Cruise and Stephen King that it started to feel kind of like a con. But if you'll remember one of my old videos, I heavily criticized this Tom Holland Spider-Man movies for the way they sideline Peter as almost like Iron Man's sidekick, and how like Iron Man's such like a big part of those films. And I remember in one of those videos saying how I vilified Marvel for that, but that if DC did something similar with Batman, I wouldn't care. And that's true. I don't care that The Flash is being sort of playing second fiddle to Michael Keaton's return as Batman, because I'm a Batman mark, and I pop for most Batman things. So like right off the bat, a little bit of hypocrisy if you've been watching the channel for a long time and you see some of the things that I tend to say about the Marvel side of stuff. Yeah, I'm weak to Batman, whatever. No one's perfect. That said, for roughly the first 30 minutes or so of The Flash, I was very on board. I think that Andy Muschietti is an interesting director. I liked the first It, not crazy about It Part 2. And I felt that dichotomy is actually kind of like maybe just having to feel about that man going forward, because the beginning of this I was very into, and I don't know what happened later. But the first 30 minutes of this movie or so feels like a genuine Flash movie that came out of the other movies we've seen him in. It just feels like a nice little superhero movie. Like there's a big set piece where they're saving people, there's some banter, there's some comedy, but not too much comedy. The action is interesting, not the most inventive or the most well executed. There's a lot of like not great CG throughout this movie, but it was like, it was engaging. I was into it. I was like, okay, cool, we're gonna send off Ben Affleck Batman. I love Batfleck, one of my favorite iterations of Batman in the history of the character. We get a little bit more of these other things, like stuff you see in the trailer, I guess. I was feeling it, you know, because I was like, this is a DC movie that doesn't take itself quite as serious, and it doesn't have quite the same level of like earnest like sincerity that Snyder brought to his stuff, where it's like very heavy and big and mythical, but it's not like a full-on like gag joke. It's not quite as like goofy or ridiculous as some of the stuff in like the first Aquaman film, for instance. It feels like the happy medium that DC thought they could create by bringing Joss Whedon on to like script doctor Zack Snyder. Like this movie feels like what that middle ground could have been like if it wasn't such a disaster. And that's pleasant, you know? Having just come off of Across the Spider-Verse, The Flash is a film that deals in very similar thematic terrain. It is a movie about a hero who discovers that he can, in fact, go back in time and change the past, having to wrestle with what that entails, like what the bad parts of that are. Personally, I'm a little bit over superhero stories that are all heavily born from like the recent like last 20 years of like Jeff Johns hyper fixating on like grief as a part of characters' origins and stuff. You know, there's a lot of this stuff in his iteration of the Flash with regards to like he's the guy who's essentially responsible for the Nora Allen gets murdered version of Barry Allen's origin that people just take as, oh, it's always been like this. It's not. It's a relatively recent thing. And while I think that makes for an interesting dramatic conflict for like a movie like this, it's a little bit like disheartening that I don't know how many more superhero movies we can have that are just about like you have to let bad things happen for good things to happen. Like on a certain kind of fundamental level, that's like yeah, you do have to accept that grief is a part of life and the bad things are going to happen to you. But repeatedly making stories about people who like are powerful and are people we're supposed to look up to be heroes, and the thing they're supposed to be doing is teaching us to accept that things suck, it's reflective of our times, but it's just kind of like a bummer. I think it's a bit of a bummer. That said, I do think that for the most part, the through line of this movie, the dramatic through line of this movie, actually deals with those themes very well. I think that the performances are pretty strong. I think Ezra Miller, they bring a lot to the table for this iteration of Barry Allen, this sort of like autistic coded like sort of character, and then also the fact that they play more than one iteration of the character in the movie without getting into the spoiler territory. It's strong work, I'll say. Like, not my favorite interpretation of the character, but it's strong work, and it makes for a good emotional through line in the story. I think that Ben Affleck says goodbye to Bruce Wayne in a pretty nice fashion. It's a nice little performance. And I think that obviously you see Michael Keaton in the trailers, so Michael Keaton is back. I don't think he brings it in this movie the way he did even to like playing the Vulture or other more recent work like The Founder and stuff like that. Like, it's definitely maybe the laziest Michael Keaton performance I've ever seen in his career, but even that is still like pretty good. It's still pretty charming. It's still pretty entertaining. The parts you see in the trailer where he just like repeats the catchphrases from Batman, those parts are bad. Like, they actually land very awkwardly for me. There was a few guys that like cheered hard for "I'm Batman," cheered really hard for "Do you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts." I was like, stop, please, just. I feel there's no bigger fan of Keaton Batman on earth than me, and even I was like, dude, it's okay. I would have been happy if he was just like spouting TLC lyrics.
Ain't too proud to beg.
Come on.
What?
It's not funny anymore.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not trying to
TLC
be
references.
Still nothing.
That said, nitpicks aside, when you set aside some of the obvious, very lazy fan service that the movie gives us quite a bit of, if you just focus on the story of Barry trying to save his mother through time travel and then dealing with the repercussions of ruining the cosmos as a result, that through line part is pretty good. There's like a good, I would say, like 100-minute movie in here about Barry's a superhero. He goes back in the past. He learns a lesson. Like, there's stuff here where I was like, yeah, some of the really stronger emotional beats in the movie between Barry and his father here, played by Ron Livingston, because Billy Crudup was busy, I guess, I don't know, cheating on another wife. And like, that stuff is really good. The stuff with Barry and his mom, like the family, those little tender dramatic moments, I really like that stuff here. I was actually really. There's I felt a pretty good scene near the end that really kind of like got me a little misty-eyed. You know what I mean? Like, I did feel a connection to these things in the movie. But there just comes a point in the story where like the entire large final set piece just looks like not very good. Like, it looks like garbage. We can just say that, I think. And you start to wonder, as expensive as this movie is, as big of a thing as it is, as much pressure has been put on it, you begin to wonder, like, how did it end up like this? This kind of ugly, kind of vapid, mistake, I think. Like, just there's parts of the movie that to me felt like, oh, they kind of know what they're doing. They're telling a good story here. This is cool. And I don't know what happened. I don't understand what happened. Like, my spoiler-free review take on the movie is I think this is a really solid, like, 3 stars, no higher movie that has some strong dramatic stuff, some pretty fun action here and there, and is largely entertaining. Some of the comedic relief is actually genuinely funny. Some of it goes a little too far. Overall, it's like a very, like, this is nice. This is a nice little thing. If this was just a random movie that got released, like if the superhero industrial complex allowed us to have movies that were just nice little superhero movie stories that didn't have to bear the brunt of the weight of multiversal commitments and brand management, stuff like that. If you just have a movie that's like a little flash story, a little adventure, like some of DC's animated straight-to-video movies are, this would fit in with that. It would be nice. It would be a nice world to live in, actually, if they made superhero movies that were like that. But we don't live in that world, okay? We live in this world. And in this world, these movies are often just devices to get to other movies. And if you don't want to be spoiled about the brunt of this movie, then you can leave now. Thank you for watching. You can skip ahead to like the very, very end. I'll put chapters probably, I don't know, but like come back after you've seen the movie or whatever. But because I don't even, I have to get into this. So last chance to turn away, last chance to walk away. And go, like, you look at TikTok or something. But if you want the nitty-gritty, I'm about to get into it. Okay? Spoilers. The thing about this movie is if you've seen the trailers, that's the movie, basically. Like, the trailers are beat for beat the movie. It opens up with a big set piece with the current continuity of the characters. Barry goes back in time, fucks up the timeline, meets a younger version of Barry. That Barry gets powers, yada, yada, yada. Michael Keaton is Batman, yada, yada, yada. There's no Superman on this earth, but there's a Supergirl, and they're going to all fight Zod together. The thrust of the movie is Barry having to put together a makeshift Justice League with the only heroes this earth has, a less intelligent and less motivated version of himself, Michael Keaton Batman, who's very old, and then Kara Zor-El, who's been in captivity this whole time. So, like, you see everything in the trailer that's that big blank space where the climax happens. Like, it just looks like the loading screen from the Matrix where they get all the guns and stuff. Like, that's kind of where they're fighting, this just nebulous desert space. And that whole thing is fucking bad. There's a couple little beats in there that aren't so bad, but the whole thing is ugly as shit. It sucks. It sucks shit. It looks fucking terrible. But I kind of thought at first, maybe it's like subterfuge, because the actual big battle is like not really the important thing. The important thing in this big battle is that they lose, and then neither Barry can accept that they're losing, so they keep going back in time to try to fix the battle. I remember thinking, man, it would be so cool, since the focus is about them learning that they can't change the past, they have to accept things. If you wanted to shoehorn in all of the alleged cameos and fan service things that I'd heard about online, you could just let this battle play out. And then every time one of the Barrys goes back to change something, kind of Edge of Tomorrow, like, you know, like they get like these extra little chances at the fight, you could cut back and it would be more changes to the timeline. And then you could just have, like, in one scene it's Michael Keaton, and then he comes back and they get like a gag and it's like Adam West or something. I don't know, whatever. Like, if they wanted to fit in all those things, that would have been a way to make them feel dramatically part of the story, and it would have connected to the themes of every time Barry changes something, things go out of whack. But instead it was like, no, there's no real changes. They're just going to keep redoing the battle, and then you're going to keep having to watch Michael Keaton die. You're going to have to keep watching Kara Zor-El die. And, you know, until Barry has to accept, I can't, these are, you know, as they say in Spider-Verse, like, these are like canon events. Like, these people have to die. This has to happen. The only way to fix this is to go back and let my mom die. But then new Barry doesn't want to accept that because it comes from a completely different arc. Like, he grew up with this mom. He doesn't know a life without her the way this Barry does. And obviously, as you can kind of tell from the trailers, he turns into this evil Black Flash thing from being caught in a loop of trying to change things. And while this is happening, sorry, let me go back a little bit. They've screened this movie a few times already at CinemaCon and a couple of other screenings. And all the screenings before the ones, I think, starting today, the ones that I watched, they cut the last 10 minutes off of the movie. So if you were at CinemaCon or you saw another word-of-mouth screening or something beforehand, you would have a message from Andy Muschietti saying this is not the final cut of the movie. We're saving some surprises for the real audience or whatever. And it would end with Barry having vanquished the enemy and going back in time, allowing his mother to die like she's supposed to, and then coming back to the present. So it literally would end on a thing where he is back in his apartment. He's like, oh, I made it back home. And then it would be the end. No credits, nothing. But everyone knew there was this extra 10 minutes going around that you weren't going to see until the real final round of press screenings or the actual opening next week. Going into the screening, I'd heard multiple rumors about like what those last 10 minutes were. The fact that they kept them off of CinemaCon and everything else, that they were trying not to ruin anything. One of the rumors was that it was going to be like some kind of post-credits thing that was like a teaser for all the gun stuff, which didn't make sense to me because like there is no gun stuff other than, I guess, the Creature Commandos animated stuff that maybe already started, but there's no new Superman, there's no new Batman, nothing for the new stuff is ready, especially not with the writer's strike going on. So I figured it must be some other, it must be the way they actually wrap up. This is the end of the Snyderverse. This is the setting up of the future. I figured however they close that loop must have some kind of big secret thing they pulled off that they wanted to wow people with. That's what I thought. Obviously, it's my fault for being aware of all these like news and rumors and things, whatever. But I knew going in, because even the director spoiled some of this stuff, that there were some big cameos. Like there's like a CGI version of Christopher Reeves next to like Helen Slater, Supergirl. Basically, when the big climactic battle is happening between Barry, young Barry, and then future evil old Barry, and they're all whatever kvetching, it shows what Grant Morrison kind of called like the orrery of worlds, like the kind of New 52, all the different like the strata of cosmic shit. And there's other worlds you're seeing, and these worlds are seeing a glimpse of this battle happening because all the multiverses are converging. And you see one that's like kind of black and white, and it's like the George Reeve Superman from like the serials or whatever. And then it shows you, I need to be clear, it's not like a hologram type deal or even like a AI, whatever thing they did with like Grand Moff Tarkin. It's not like that. It's like just a CGI animated thing that looks like Christopher Reeves. It's almost like the CGI Neo from the Matrix sequels if it looked like Christopher Reeves. Like, it's that not realistic. And Helen Slater, Supergirl, is there too. Then, the part that I actually popped for a little bit, they show you Nick Cage as Superman fighting the giant spider monster that John Peters wanted in the Tim Burton version of Superman that never got made. But even then, again, it's like this CG animated thing. And there might have been some other little cameos that I missed too, but the only way I can describe it is it feels like the kind of multiversal montage that they did on the CW shows for the Crisis events, but they have more money here, but it looks worse. Like, it looks demonstrably worse. Like, I don't know why. So I thought maybe that stuff was what was being held back from the screenings. But then I'm like, no, that's in the part that people saw. I guess people saw Nick Cage. They saw not Christopher Reeves. Christopher Reeve? Have I been saying it wrong the whole time? But the actual 10 minutes, the last 10 minutes, is that Barry comes home. He's back home. Much of the movie is built around the fact that his dad is getting his last appeal, and he's not gonna make it, so his dad's gonna rot in jail. He comes back to the present, and he changed things. His mom still died. His dad's still on trial for her murder, or has been in jail for her murder, but he changed things just enough for this piece of evidence to allow his dad to get off. So he gets something of a happy ending. He has to accept that his mother is dead. We never find out who killed her or any of that type of stuff, but she's dead. But his dad didn't do it, and now he can have his dad back in his life. And that's like a decent little happy ending. But it builds to this thing where he goes out of the courthouse, and he gets a phone call from Bruce Wayne, and you can't really hear Bruce's voice, and he's telling him about the stuff, and a big, expensive car pulls up. Bruce is getting out of it. He gets out of the car, there's all these paparazzi, and then he sees Bruce Wayne's face. Now, here's the thing. Had all of this stuff not happened with the WBD merger and Gunn and all these things, I think the original ending for this movie was supposed to be that he changed things enough that when he gets back, Michael Keaton is Batman. And that would be the thing. Michael Keaton would stick around for future movies. He was in Batgirl. He was going to do other stuff where the Batman of the new version of the DC Universe was going to be more like a Nick Fury, old guy, spy master person, I guess, or whatever. Now, if we change things, and this movie is supposed to be closing the loop of the Snyderverse, you would think that this end would be, the gag would be that this is not Ben Affleck, but we don't know who's playing Batman and Brave and the Bold, So it would just not have a reverse shot showing who Bruce Wayne is. You would just have Barry looking at him and being like, who the fuck is that? And that would be enough to let you know that he changed things in a surprising way. And then these new movies would answer that. You know what I mean? Like literally just that. The through line in this movie is, in Barry's world, Ben Affleck is Batman. When he changes things, Michael Keaton is Batman. When he comes back, if this is leading to a new Batman actor, and that's going to be what's changing the universe because there's going to be new versions of these characters, you just maybe leave it at that cliffhanger. That makes sense to me. It is not what they do. It is not what they do. They keep the same type of ending where it's revealed to be Michael Keaton, but instead of Michael Keaton, it's George Clooney, who famously played Batman in Batman and Robin. And it's a funny gag. It's cool they kept it under wraps. It's a nice little bit, you know? Okay, so he changed things, his dad got off, but George Clooney is Batman in this universe now. They don't resolve that. That's the ending. Then there's credits, and there's a post-credit scene that involves Barry and Jason Momoa, Aquaman, getting drunk together. Really, Aquaman's drunk. Barry can't get drunk. And Barry's explaining the plot of the movie to him and saying, yeah, like in my world, you were exactly the way you are now. Basically saying that when Aquaman 2 comes out at the end of the year, that is why there's no differences. The world has changed, but it hasn't affected Aquaman, or whatever. That's how it ends. So there's going to be a Blue Beetle movie. Not sure how tethered that is to the continuity. Then there'll be this Aquaman 2 movie that everyone says already is trash and has had a troubled production, all this different stuff. That movie's not going to wrap this shit up. And then there'll just be a Superman movie where Superman is new, but we're still going to see other random characters from this iteration. Now, in a way, that is the most DC Comics shit ever, right? When they did the big New 52 reboot and changed everything and started from scratch, Grant Morrison wasn't done with Batman Incorporated, so they just carried all that shit over because it was selling still. Ditto Jeff Johns' Green Lantern stuff at the time. Everything's different except the stuff that's functioning financially. So here we're getting the same thing. James Gunn is starting the universe over, but he's keeping the stuff from the movie he made and the show he made, and he'll probably keep whoever else continues making the money. I imagine Margot Robbie will keep playing Harley Quinn, etc. But everybody else is going to start from scratch. So, you know, comic accurate, I suppose. But here's my thing. The proposition of this movie was, hey, we canceled Batgirl because it was designed for streaming and it didn't look good enough to release theatrically, and we could afford to write it off. If we released it theatrically, it would have harmed the brand by looking so bad. We can't do that with The Flash because it's too expensive. And we need this movie to set up everything else. We have to make this movie because this is the movie that paves the way for a new restart. That's what they said. And my personal feelings about the Ezra Miller stuff is like, I'll link in the description just like the Wikipedia, like the part of Ezra's wiki that's like crimes, because it's fucking bonkers. There's a lot in there, and there's a lot of arguments from people between like, oh, well, people are talking about having Jonathan Majors recast from being Kang because he's been outed as an abuser, but then Ezra gets to keep doing this stuff because they're white, yada yada. And to me, the thing has always been purely from a pragmatic viewpoint. It has nothing to do with morality. In Hollywood, all morality stuff is only really moral when it also affects the money. You'll get canceled if, you know, hey, you're not producing anymore, then we can get rid of you. You know what I mean? But it's very clear to me that they were explaining the stuff away and putting Ezra through rehab and everything to kind of be like, look, we can't reshoot the movie. Ezra's in every fucking frame. Ezra's playing multiple characters. We need this movie to get to the next stuff, so that's why we're keeping Ezra. But then ultimately this movie doesn't do that. It doesn't do the thing that it was pitched to do. And it doesn't even do anything else worthwhile. Like, it's like, you were only supposed to do this one thing, and you don't even do that. So what was the point? This is just another, like, failed experiment. You know what I mean? And, like, now I understand there's pretty heavy rumors that the creative team for this film are going to do Brave and the Bold, which will have to have a new Batman actor. And we just, obviously that actor has not been chosen clearly because they haven't even signed these deals yet, but like, why end it with the gag? Why end it with the George Clooney gag? It's a funny thing. It's whatever. It could have been the ending and the post-credits gag are like not even very funny. They're charming enough. And again, if all of this weird stuff had happened as little Easter eggs as a part of the battle, if they kept cutting around to different little cameos, and Nick Cage Superman, and George Clooney Batman, or Halle Berry Catwoman, or just goofy little, if that's what you guys want to do, you want to do the shit the Marvel's doing with, you know, having fucking Reed Richards be the Jim from The Office, if that's what you want to fucking do, you want to do what they're doing, then do that, but at least make it make more sense. You know, I hate to fucking favorably compare some part of this movie to Multiverse of Madness when I think I liked this movie more than Multiverse of Madness. Like, the fact that I gotta fucking do that, it's just such a bummer. I don't get it. And the thing is, there's not another way to fix this now. Now, here's the thing. Who cares, right? Superman Legacy is gonna come out. It'll be a new #1 starting point. People will just figure it out, right? But a lot of normie people, like regular people, are going to be confused by this. I saw this with my best friend Cody, and when we were waiting for me to like head home, and we were ready to part ways, this guy who was at the screening, who was wearing like a Flash logo like jacket, even overheard us talking about the movie, and he came over and was asking, because he wasn't there with the critics. It was also open to the public, people who got invites, whatever. Just a regular guy who likes comics. He was like, I thought it was going to be like Flashpoint. There's no where's Professor Zoom? Where's the Reverse Flash? What about this? How come Thomas Wayne wasn't in it? Like, that's just the average person, like the average people that kind of tangentially, the casuals who like these movies, are going to be confused a little bit. I mean, like, there's not an explanation for why there's all these Batman, and then it doesn't end with like a new status quo. It ends with an unfunny gag. And the movie already has a lot of unfunny gags. And to hide behind this movie's perceived importance for the future of the brand, to excuse keeping Ezra casted and stuff, just seems really ugly to me. Now, me personally, again, I'm not that hardcore moral about who's in what. You know what I mean? Like, or who does what, or who says what. I still laugh at Nick Mullen jokes from time to time. Okay, like, I'm not perfect, but this bit, ending this movie that's this long and all this stuff, ending it with this George Clooney gag that they were so proud of that they wanted to hide it until closer to the release. Where are your priorities, man? Like, I criticize the Marvel, apparatus very hardcore in my writing and on my channel because I have a lot of issues with the way they produce stories. I always have kind of had this soft spot for DC because even though they're maybe not as successful, I personally have a deeper affinity for those characters. So I am willing to kind of give them a wide berth while they try to figure it all out, you know? And I still am positive that I think Gunn will bring some good to this world. But watching this, it was just like, why couldn't we just quietly move beyond this at this point? Like, I don't think this is not something that deserves a sequel. I don't think there's enough to Ezra's take on Barry to want to see multiple movies with him in that role. I'm pretty sure they're just going to shelve The Flash for a while until this blows over and they'll just do something new with somebody new, and it's fine. Like I said, in a way, it's just more like the way DC actually functions, which is not something you want to replicate, all things considered, you know? So, that's why I just couldn't. It was a bummer. You know, Cody and I talked about the movie afterwards, and, he really didn't like it at all. And I wasn't crazy about it, but I felt like I liked it more. As we talked, I was like, no, I liked this. Then I got here, and I turned this on, and I think I liked it less than I thought I did. There's not a ton here that I want to recommend. Like, on the heels of Guardians 3 and Spider-Verse, why? Like, this doesn't even rate. It's not even close to either film. And as mad as I was about the whole cliffhanger thing in Spider-Verse, and maybe I was overreacting to that compared to other people's takes, this was like such a letdown. Like, and I told myself, well, maybe if I didn't know about the 10 minutes and all this different stuff, I wouldn't have built it up. Even if I didn't know, if that's how the movie ended, I would have been like, what the fuck are we doing? I would have thought they were holding out something for the real release. And maybe they are, but I doubt it. I think they're perfectly comfortable ending it by showing you a CGI Christopher Reeve and then this shit. And that sucks. I don't have anything else to say about The Flash. Don't bother watching it. Whatever, fuck it. Who cares? There's some stuff that's nice in it, but it'll probably be nice in VOD, you know? Yeah, fuck it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you love this video, subscribe to the channel. I'm reviewing some other movies coming up soon. And talking about some TV stuff this month too, actually. So keep an eye out for that. If you have any thoughts, share them in the comments below. I love talking to you guys. If you have any questions, ask. If you're asking questions about any of the spoilery parts, obviously, please be fair to the people that haven't seen it. But yeah, I don't know. Thank you for watching. I hope everyone's doing well, staying safe, being good to yourselves and each other. I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.